Howdy gamers! Do you ever see a video game and immediately think, wow, that's a game for me? It doesn't happen often and completely comes down to taste. But the first example I can remember of this is Cruelty Squad. I was watching a Vinny Sunday stream and he popped on this game, and I remember immediately being enthralled by the art style and game design. If you don't know, Cruelty Squad is a mission-based shooter, much like GoldenEye for the N64, coming complete with advanced movement options like bunny hopping and strafing. The draw was so strong that I beat it in nearly one sitting. It was the exact same experience when scrolling through Twitter one day in August 2023. A game scrolls by, announcing itself, looking like a PS1 cult classic. The first thing to catch my eye? The character design. Character design has always been essential to me, and it's obviously important to others as well. And no, I'm not talking about AAA games spending $1 billion to get a character's eye to have crow's feet. I'm talking silhouettes. Good examples include nearly every character from the Dragon Ball series, like Frieza or Cell, being instantly recognizable even if you can only see the shadow through smoke. Transferring these silhouettes to video games is no easy task, but when executed, the results fill me with dopamine. Looking at Civil is like watching my cat play. My eyes dilate and my heart fills with joy and love. I was instantly sold. This game looked perfect. The developer of the game, Ritz, or @Ritzler on Twitter. Ritz is an indie dev who has dedicated their work so far to 3D platformers, having multiple games at least partially developed by the time of Pseudoregalia, including Electrokinetic, a roguelike 3D platformer in a virtual world, and Blazing Dynamo, a more traditional open 3D platformer with a robot girl named Bucket. Some of these games are available in demo form on their itch.io, so check them out if you're so inclined, but in review, this work seems to be a culmination of their previous ones. Pseudoregalia feels like a polished final product, so it's cool to be able to go back and see where it all started and what has changed. Did you know? It started off as a demo submitted to an itch.io game jam. Not only that, but it's still available in its demo form today. It's true. Pseudoregalia was initially shown to the world during Metroidvania Month 19 Jam, which is a continuing jam hosted every other month. During the competition period, devs can submit their games under some restrictions. The main one being that all assets in the game must be made during the competition period. The jam gives an optional theme and devs are off to the races. The submissions are then judged based on criteria that is laid out on the jam site and changes slightly from competition to competition. The prizes are not always monetary, but this month they were, which meant the competition had more submissions and overall more hype around it. This set the stage for Ritz to drop a banger of a 2-hour experience, bringing home first place. That means that this amazing experience was made in just 3 to 4 weeks. 4 months and 13 days of refinement later, and Pseudoregalia is released on Steam to quick acclaim. The game racked up positive reviews by the number, culminating in an overwhelmingly positive review score on Steam with over 8,000 reviews to date. So, what's the game actually like? You start off by coming through a mirror, stating it was a close call before you meet your first NPC. He's a cute goat boy who seems repentant that he fell out of his cage. Looking around, you are met with the realization that many more are trapped here in cages. Walking through a giant gate of a doorway, you are greeted by the tutorial area of the game. Here's where you learn to jump, wall hang, and somewhat puzzle solve. The first power-up you find is the sword, a crystal and gold cross that seems to have an energy floating around it. Learning about breakable walls and hidden hallways and your first little enemy, you move on to the first platforming section, teaching you to look all over the room before choosing your path. Moving along, you are met with more small platforming challenges and reach a room with seemingly only one exit. You choose that path and find yourself with the dash function. This allows you to go through the previously inaccessible routes in the room before. Leaving through there, you enter another holding area for prisoners where you are again greeted by a small goat man saying, "I'll never do it again. I just want to get out of here." And another who says, "Get out." There isn't too much world building in this game besides dialogue and level design, and this paints a picture of a bleak authority figure who locks their citizens up at a whim and is powerful enough to scare them into submission, to the point where some feel safer in prison. Moving to the next room, you find a barrier that you can pass but not return through. Here you will find one more caged goat man, who tells you your disguise is paper thin, but it'll fool most of them. Not like it matters. You're stuck here like the rest of us now. No getting past Strong Eyes. This has got to be one of the more cryptic messages in the game, so let's take a moment to dissect it. I think to understand what the hell this goat man is yapping about, we need to take a look at some of the materials outside the game, like the description on Steam and itch.io. The description on itch.io states, "When reality feels like it's falling apart, one might retreat to a world in their dreams to escape it. Unfortunately, dreams aren't made to last. Explore a perverse image of noble living, grow strong, and free those trapped within this rotten dream." And Steam says, deep within the realm of sleep, Sybil finds herself pulled into a distorted castle. Grow strong, and free the weary soul of Castle Sansa. Alright, that doesn't clear up much, but gives some much needed context. We are a dream creature, pulled into different dreams by a mysterious power. We are here to free those trapped within this delusional dream whose ruler seems to have created in order to escape the hardships of their own reality. So, about the costume. One thing we can observe is we are part goat, much like the prisoners. Not only that, but we seem to have a similar fashion sense. Perhaps this implies that Sybil gets redesigned to fit her next dream when she enters. But there's still one part of this dialogue that trips me up when he says, "But it'll fool most of them." Most of who? Progressing just a bit further, you realize he's not talking about your enemies, as the first boss, Strong Eyes, takes an immediate swing in your direction. But did you catch that? Right after you enter the room, your eye is immediately drawn to the key you need to escape. But who is that floating in front of it? As soon as you approach, she quickly teleports away, being replaced by a one-armed beast wielding a sword reminiscent of the Dragon Slayer from Berserk. This, as it turns out, was the princess, the girl responsible for this dream. Assumably, she is here as she either summoned you or can sense your presence and is following along to track your progress. Finally, unlocking the door to the exit, you are greeted with one final lore drop. A stone tablet, more like a stone tomb, lined with text reading, "A tower holding the essence of the princess, never to be seen again." But with the three powers of the sun, one can find their own path. The tablet, even in PS1-inspired graphics, looks to be withered and old, speaking to the amount of time that has passed since this dream's inception. With the overall objective of the game laid out, it's time to get to work. Finally, you're in the game proper, entering into Castle Sansa. In one branching path from this area, we can find an item that keeps the memories from fading, or memento, or the map. This area has a particularly interesting NPC as it was added recently, months after many had played the game for the first time. He says, "So many have been trapped in the dungeon, and for what?" Ignoring his grammatical error, I believe this to be the creator talking directly to the players, apologizing in a way for hours spent lost with no map. As one who lost said hours, this thought made me giggle. There's a neat setting I wanted to highlight, although not using myself. It is the option to turn your animations to a retro FPS, making it feel a bit more like a game from a 5th gen console while still keeping the smooth beauty of the polygons surrounding. I've seen something similar implemented before in the Kickstarter Banjo-Kazooie spiritual sequel by the same dev team, Yooka-Laylee. In this game, you can unlock an N64 mode that turns down the resolution on the characters and environments. This is an eyesore. And although I got the game to relive some nostalgia, I immediately turned it off. Pseudoregalia's take on this mechanic is a much more careful one, giving a nostalgic feel while keeping the game in the 2020s. Next, let's move on to a big one, the level design. As a 3D platformer and a Metroidvania, its influences are pretty obvious. Throughout the game, you acquire new movement abilities and add to your repertoire. These are often hidden in front of movement puzzles that serve as mini tutorials, requiring the use of each of them. Let's take a moment to explain the moves. You've got all your classics: slide, slide, jump, wall kick, pogo bounce, enemy bounce, wall cling, and a ranged attack. These moves unlock entire sections and hallways, allowing you to explore deeper and find your next upgrade. However, this game's progression is imperfect in the perfect way. These powers are very versatile in combination, but you can always tell when a room is demanding something you're missing. In my experience, this didn't stop me from trying. This led to me being able to get to places that I should not have been, thinking I was making progress by doing some unintentionally hard platforming. At one point, I almost felt soft-locked and had to do more really tight platforming to get myself unstuck and back to the main areas. Some might call it padding, some might call it a flaw, but I call it fun. The tools you pick up in this game are useful everywhere in emergent ways. For example, you want to get to the top of that bridge but don't feel like looping through 3 screens? Use your new pogo bounce and a few tough wall kicks and boom, you're there much faster. This is the beauty of the game. The ability to use your tools in ways that only you would think of to get somewhere slightly faster than before. This may not sound impressive, but you feel like a platforming god when you hit it, and this feeling should not be understated in a 3D platformer. Although Pseudoregalia sets itself apart from its influences, its classic objectives retain that same old feeling of satisfaction in completing the game. The easiest comparison that comes to my mind is, again, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. In the early game, you explore the castle with the objective of collecting your 3 powers of the sun, and using the powers you've gained to explore further. Once this journey is complete, you're ready to take on the tower for the first time. Think of it like running to the Temple of Time when you have all 3 medallions, pulling out the sword and realizing you've only just begun, because now there are 5 more to collect. In Pseudoregalia, we platform up the tower, essentially using our powers to unlock it and find our endgame power, the Cling Gem. Climbing up one last pole, we're met with the roadmap to the end of the game. A giant locked door with, you guessed it, 5 keyholes. Now it's time to return to the castle with a full range of motion, much like returning to Hyrule as a more powerful adult Link. Speaking of power, let's talk about this game's focus on keeping combat light with movement at its core, and how it succeeds and somewhat misses on that. First, let's talk about what it gets right. Keeping combat light through its lovable enemy designs. The egg, the first little guy you meet, who looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh monster that escaped its dual disc. Unlike the rest of the cast, this one does not have an attack, but rather serves as a means to bolster your reserves of health. The Horn Sprite, Eye Sword, Eye Wheel, Ghost Maid, Hand Zapper, and Big Guard round out most of the rest of the enemies you'll see throughout the game, and they range from, if I hit you it's your fault, to reskins of the first boss, who was decently challenging. However, these more challenging enemies are still more of a test of skill, as it's simple enough to just avoid or run away from them in most situations. I think these fun and silly sinister side characters are a great way to achieve the developers' aim of keeping combat light but interesting. However, I'm not convinced they succeeded in keeping movement at the heart of the combat. While I enjoyed the gameplay thoroughly, I was left wondering in the end why none of the fights in the game worked platforming into them. I can easily imagine a boss in this game where you have to chase them over a void floor by platforming through the air, or having a boss that jumps up real high and forces the player to come to them with an attack that allows you to bounce your way up, especially since all the difficulty in this game comes from its platforming. In this game, you won't be making runs back to fight a boss over and over. You will be respawning to run back to platforming rooms. While you only take half a heart from the environment at a time, and you can always go back and hit the save or beat up some monsters before you lose all your health, the one more try mentality has a strong pull in this game. This mentality will pull you to act because you were just so close, even though it's your last try before you inevitably have to go back to your last save. This is the difficulty of the game. It could be called adaptable, as the only thing really making you lose all your health is a little voice in the back of your head telling you not to run away. The stronger this voice, the more difficult some sections can seem. But overall, I felt like the platforming was very progressively balanced, increasing in difficulty only after you've adjusted to your new tools. Next, I want to spend just a few seconds here to appreciate the music. This game is meant to take place in a dream realm, and between the visuals and the music, I think it achieves that end. From the calming tones of the main menu to the harmonies over a ticking clock in the opening area, dilapidated dungeon, to the echoing singing in the halls of Castle Sansa. The music seems to help describe the area you're in by not only using whimsical and calming melodies, but also mixing in background sounds like a clock ticking or fire crackling. My personal favorites are the upbeat and intense boss fight music from the final fight or the library. Take your pick. So, after you finally collected all 5 keys, you start heading back to the tower to finish the job. Exploring through a world shrouded by a dark cloud, confused and worried citizens, many seemingly innocent prisoners, and a ruler who is clearly exacting her pain on everyone that lives in the world she created, Sybil charges ahead as the only one willing or able to act. Reaching the top, the gates swing open and a celestial bridge appears, swaying in the wind, leading to a room that houses the essence of the princess. You enter the distorted memory, falling down a deep pit, and finally come face to face with this world's creator. This fight is no cakewalk, especially if you didn't find much extra health. She can spin at you, shoot projectiles, fly, use a spinning bullet hell move, do a ground combo, and spawn a bunch of bouncing obstacles that last for a while. Oh, not to mention, she has Frieza's Death Ball, which she can pull out at any point, even if she's very high in the air. It's possible to cancel this attack by hitting her first, but in my experience, doing this ends in a pitiful scene where she pies you in the face as soon as you get near, doing 2 whole hearts. After part of her shatters, she enters the second phase where her attacks have less cooldown and her projectiles got a major buff. Oh yeah, and she likes to fly a lot more now. Once you land the final hit, she disappears and the final cutscene plays. She says, "Not really the kind of person you want to hang out with, right?" I barely remember what she was really like at this point. Oh, sorry. You're probably wondering who I am. Honestly, I don't really know anymore. Nobody's special, I guess. But then, that's the whole reason you're here, right? I get it. I can't just hide here forever and pretend I don't exist. I'm sure I'll find something worth being awake for. Maybe I'll finally get into photography. That would be nice, I think. So thanks, goat, bunny, cat lady. Sybil? Got it. I'll make sure to write it down as soon as I wake up. I don't want to forget you, too. I'm sure you've got someone else to help out, right? So yeah, thanks. Take care, Sybil. Finally, they answered the question. She's a goat, bunny, cat lady, and it's not up for debate. But really, this reveals the true underlying pain afflicting this world. She doesn't like herself, has low confidence in her abilities, has failed enough and is too scared to face the world anymore. The very real-world implications of mental health issues such as anxiety and depression, manifesting herself a world where she's the ruler and even she doesn't like herself. The citizens may represent her real-life relationships, where some can directly feel the impact of her sadness, while others are left wondering why today is less sunny than the last. She has removed herself from their lives, and whether they realize it or not, they're less happy for it. I feel I can relate to these themes and the message that sometimes you need someone to come wake you up. This hidden motivation within oneself to relentlessly pursue a better you, fighting against the doubt and fear in your mind. That is what I view Sybil as. As while it may be a part of your psyche, sometimes it feels like there's 2 different yous battling it out, deciding whether to move forward or hide from it all. In this game, you play as the you that wants a better you, and it may take time, but eventually they reach you. And the next time you slip back into your own dream world, wanting to shut everyone and everything out, Sybil will be back again, trying to set you free. This has been a King Sammy presentation of a review of Pseudoregalia in world record time. Nearly. I'm currently in second place on the leaderboards, chasing a crazy world record set by Rin. Please like and subscribe to watch my first video on Berserk or my next video on the story of Dragon Ball Z Budokai.